You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, and welcome back to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. As you know, I'm out here on the Appalachian Trail, but as I write and read this, I'm actually off trail. The story is going to develop over these 4 days that I'm going to describe, but I've got to tell you, I'm not currently totally optimistic about my ability to continue the trail. I still have hope, but it's hard to maintain positivity when you've just spent the afternoon in the emergency room. But before we hear what's happened, let's have a quick word from our sponsor, Polar Steps. If you're heading out on a long hike this year, which I am, I've got something I think you're going to love. It's called Polar Steps. It's a travel tracking app that's going to become a favourite with hikers. You set your start date, let it run quietly in the background, and it maps your entire journey automatically, all on your own beautiful spinning 3D globe. And don't worry, the tracking feature uses about 4% of your battery on a single charge, so it's not going to kill your phone when you're out there. You can add photos and short journal entries as you go, so your map shows you where you were and your words remind you of what that day actually felt like. There's a light social layer too. Family and friends can follow along, or you can keep it completely private. As every hiker says, hike your own hike. And when you're done, you can relive the whole thing in the app or turn it into a stunning coffee table book with your route, stats, photos and stories. And did I tell you that it's entirely free to download and use? The only time you'll be paying anything is if you decide to turn your trip into a book. That's Polar Steps. Track it now, treasure it forever. Day 59, which is last Wednesday. Quarter way in, mile 556.0 to Burke's Garden Hostel, mile 571.5, a 15.5 mile day. This was yet another day when my recollections from previous hikes were completely upended by the reality of actually doing the hike again. I do recall the climb up to Chestnut Knob Shelter as a bit of a schlep, but I don't remember it being quite as bad as it was. And I certainly don't remember the sweat fest as so unending. We were leaving, obviously, at quarter way in behind, and even though it's at just 0.3 miles off the trail, it is well worth a visit. You know, the breakfast was magnificent, as it always is there. And Tina does a phenomenal job and makes everybody feel at home. And the place has a real homely feel, a comfortable homely feel to it. And you can sit out on the patio at the front. You can sit in the lovely armchairs and just generally chill out. And she's so welcoming, and she's one of my favourite people on trail. But so we said goodbye to that. And when we were sitting around at breakfast together, because you go into the main kitchen, which you're not normally allowed into, to pick out your food. She set it all up in this main kitchen. And when it's ready, she opens the doors, we go in and get our food, then come back out to the communal dining table. So it's great. You can sit and have your coffee while you're waiting for your breakfast. Then you all sit down and have breakfast together. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it, every time I've been there. And when we were sitting around talking, we heard that the initial climb up through the pastures, which happens straight as you leave Tina's, you go back to the 0.3 of a mile back to the trail, turn left, go into a field and start going uphill. And we were warned that there were tons of ticks there. And so I sprayed everything down, on my boots and my legs and my pants and my socks. And hopefully they weren't going to affect me. Funnily enough, I didn't see any on me, so I was lucky, although several people said they had 20 or 30 ticks on them, on their feet anyway. But once again, the climb through pasture or boards, they seem so much more arduous because you can get to see where you need to get to. And it's often well above your head, it looks like. So, you just have to accept that this climb is through a pasture. For me, they're twice as hard as climbing through a forest. But this was the first, and in fact the easiest climb of the day, with two others to follow that were, I don't know, about 500 feet each. But they were merely appetizers for the climb to the top of Chestnut Knob, which was about a 2,000 foot climb. And I was looking at the profile and I thought, I do not remember it being that long. I don't know, it's funny how your mind's played tricks with you. And I found that on this trail more than any other time. I've been so wrong about so many places I've already been to. And for those of you who've done that climb, you will probably remember the wonderful reward at the top. There is a 4-walled shelter, which is nice, with a door, and there are bunks, which is a pretty cool place to stay, actually. But the highlight, undoubtedly, is the extraordinary view over Burke's Garden. It's known locally as God's thumbprint, which perfectly captures the shape that has been formed over the years. The whole land is flattened out, where God put his thumb, with a wonderful ridge all around it. And on this day, even though the weather had been pretty manky, a bit rainy and that, we could see down into the valley below, and it just looked beautiful. And I knew there was a hostel at the bottom, one that I'd never been to before, but I'd heard great things about it. In fact, Rebecca, the owner, had been a guest on my podcast some time ago. In my mind, I kept thinking that were I able to make the 2,000 foot climb, I may move on and hit the hostel. I do like to have options on trail, and I always say that hiking a trail is limited options, but I do like to have a couple of options. So this one, I thought, well, if I didn't feel like it, or if I couldn't get in at the hostel, I could stay in the shelter, and the shelter will be a perfectly acceptable place to stay. I'd been hiking around a guy called Big John, a guy who had been in my orbit for the previous few days. He was 60, actually turned 62 on trail. I think it was a couple of days ago, or today actually. No, yesterday actually. I'm recording this on Sunday, and we both go at a similar sort of place. So I stayed quite close to him as we started the climb up Chestnut Knob. And I had remembered it as a long, long walk, but through pasture most of the time. But I clearly remembered it incorrectly. We did come out onto pasture, and we also walked through it a little bit, but we also went back into the trees many times. In fact, majority of our climb was up through trees. Quite a wide path through trees, but through trees nonetheless. But eventually we finished right by the shelter and this magnificent view. There were a couple of guys we'd met before at the top, and we chatted with them for a few minutes before moving on, because there was clearly rain in our future. I called Rebecca and reserved a private room and told her that we would make the 1.5 miles down to our pickup point in about 45 minutes. I actually made it in 35 minutes, and she was there already. John came a few minutes later, and we were taken to the hostel. Delightfully, Maybelline was there. Let me remember earlier on, I interviewed Maybelline, the lady who puts eyeshadow on every morning. Fantastic. So I met her earlier in my journey and interviewed her for the podcast. I hadn't seen her since, so I thought she was off trail, which is probably pretty negative of me and unfair of me. But she was hiking with two other ladies and was clearly going well. The hostel's great. It's clean, the showers are good, and the resupply shop is really extensive. Once I cleaned up and loaded my clothes into the dishwasher, in the washing machine, I settled down for an enjoyable evening chatting with my fellow hikers. Day 60, last Thursday. Burke's Garden Hostel, mile 571.5 to VA 615, mile 585.2, a 13.7 mile slack pack. We decided to go for a slack pack because they were offering it, and it was going to be rainy, and we didn't really know what the how bad the rain was going to get. And the idea was that 615, they'd drop us off with just our small packs, and we'd walk southbound back to Burke's Hostel where they'd pick us up. But when I looked at the option, I thought that makes no sense at all. There was about 3,500 foot ascent on that Sobo hike and about 2,500 foot descent. And I said, to be honest with you, it's much better to go northbound here. And I chatted with John, and he agreed. And so we decided we're going to go Nobo and be picked up later at VA 615. I'm happy with the decision we made, but not happy with the pickup. But you'll see why in a minute. So instead of going all the way forward to VA 615, Big John and I were dropped back at the trailhead. Where we'd left yesterday, obviously, and we set out. And those light packs, they really help. And I know people don't like slack packing. Well, good for you. Don't do it. But for me, I'm taking everything I need for that day, and I'm totally happy to slack pack as much as I possibly can. And those early miles were pretty much up and down all the way with no large climbs, though they were significant enough to produce another sweat fest each time I started one. I must say the profile in Far Out didn't look in the least bit hilly, and not for the first time. I'd misread the profile. This mini roller coaster went on for about 6 miles before descending to Jenkins Shelter, where both Big John and I had some lunch and chat with a few others who were there at the shelter. And we were both going well. We knew that the worst part of the day had been done as far as the hiking's concerned. And we then had the easiest afternoon of the trail so far, with a wide kind of highway-like path that was as flat as a pancake or just marginally downhill. The profile wasn't entirely different from our roller coaster earlier, at least looking at it on Far Out. But that small difference in profile made for a lovely afternoon all the way down to Suda Road or VA 615. And this is when the excitement happened. We'd been expecting heavy rain most of the afternoon, but none had fallen, other than a few small sprinkles that didn't even necessitate putting on our rain gear. That all changed as we reached the bridge near our ending. I had underestimated the speed at which we'd be able to get down to the road, and by texting back and forth to our shuttle, I'd eventually settled on being picked up at 2:30 p.m. Unfortunately for us, we arrived at 2 p.m. and the heavens absolutely opened. At first I thought it would just be a short shower because we'd had those all morning really, so I didn't even bother putting my rain gear on initially, but with every minute the rain intensified, I realised that this was here to stay for a while. So, along with a young couple, Big John and I positioned ourselves underneath the bridge and continued to get wet as, of course, the slats of the bridge allowed plenty of water through. It's one of those moments where you stand there and really have no idea what to do. I've had that in the past with hail, and it was back in 2014. Most of my memories actually are back to 2014, not 2019. I don't know why that is actually. Anyway, this was back in 2014. I was standing under a hailstorm, and I thought I'd just stand by a tree and let it pass. But it didn't seem to pass. The hailstones got bigger, and my temperature rapidly spiraled. This was back then anyway. And I could feel myself standing underneath that bridge with that, that thing of, what do I do next? What do I do now? I'm starting to get colder. It wasn't spiraling anywhere near as fast. And I just didn't really know what to do. It was almost too wet to get into my pack and bring out a jacket to warm myself up. And by now, of course, I had put on my rain jacket and my temperature did start to drop. I was hoping that Rebecca's husband, Steve, might be early, but he wasn't. Clearly, the rain had slowed him down too, and he got there about 45 minutes after we did. We were drenched, absolutely drenched through. We chucked everything into his truck and headed back to Bert's garden. I managed to pull out my jacket, which was also a bit damp, put that on, and it did help a little bit. By the time I got back to Bert's garden, though, I was really cold, and I immediately hustled to get into the shower as soon as possible. And they've got great showers there, and I warmed up, and that's the only thing that warmed me up. And I stayed in that shower, I don't know, a good 10 minutes, I think it was, under the hot water, and I felt, really good. Everything got back to normal after that. I dressed in warm clothes, cooked myself some dinner. I hung out with my fellow hikers, including a fascinating, articulate young guy named Baloo. I actually recorded him 2 days later, but I'll play our conversation after this. It had been a great day, and I felt that my legs were allowing me to do these longer miles without any real issue. Had I known what would happen just 24 hours later, I might have had a different view. So I'm still at Weary Feet, still waiting to go, and I'm here with a young man named Baloo. What's your real name?
Ted Chamberlain.
Ted Chamberlain. Well, how did Ted Chamberlain become Baloo?
Walked up to a shelter back in Georgia. Some other gentlemen were sitting down for lunch. I joined them. They were already done eating. They were progressing on to the natural next step after eating, which is going to use the privy and talking about using the privy. One of the guys considerately noticed that I was still eating, commented, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. You're still eating, right?" And I said, "Well, what else is there to talk about out here? Life is kind of just walking, eating, sleeping, and using the privy, right? So the bare necessities." And then I kind of sang a couple bars from the song, and then boom, there you go. Then I was Baloo from then on.
You're quite the character. People become different characters on trail. Is this what you like at home?
I probably, I don't think I'm like putting on a bit. Or
No,
like
I didn't think for a moment, but you are a character. For a young man, you're a real outgoing character, and I see you talking to everybody.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, back in school, like my teachers always used to, say he's very social, and it was kind of a problem, right? I'd be distracting other people, but I think there's such a unique element of the trail in that, that you get people from all walks of life, people from different countries, different parts of the country, different occupations, different life experience. And, there's just so much you can learn from people, whether it's things about hiking or things about life, or just learning about what's happened in their life and what brings them to trail. And we all kind of have our own unique stories that have brought us into this space that brings us all together.
Sure.
So I think there's just a natural curiosity about that. I am definitely a believer that one of the best parts of the trail is the social element. I think, given the pain and suffering and dealing with the rain and all the aches and pains.
It's a nice relief.
Yeah, you kind of find solace in the fact that everybody's out here in this together in terms of, kind of fighting the same fight day after day.
Embracing the suck.
Exactly. But in a way where there's the camaraderie that I think is it's absent from a lot of daily life, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of, social cohesion or institutions and things in our society that are breaking down. Whereas out here, the institution is the trail and we're all a part of it.
Sure.
So I think that's a really unique thing in modern life that you can't always get. I think people get that experience in the military or in kind of like maybe even sometimes in shared traumas in life, which, this is not exactly a trauma, but
exactly no.
But it has a really unique way of bringing people together.
Yeah. And you're obviously embracing that. What got you here in the first place? You're how old are you?
I'm 31.
You're 31. Mm-hmm. So how were you able to escape life?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have had a pretty good career working in the food industry where I was able to make decent money. Mm-hmm. Paid for all my needs and save up some extra. And then last year my father passed. So, there's, that's one of the things that got me to trail in terms of what I was hoping to get out of it was kind of that time to process some of those events.
Sure. Has that helped?
I'm not really sure. I think, I came into this hoping to feel closer to my dad through the outdoors. Growing up, hunting, fishing, hiking, camping was kind of stuff that we did a lot. So I was hoping to feel his presence or something, or just kind of feeling connected to him through the love of the outdoors. And I haven't gotten as much as that as I would have hoped, but there have been small moments throughout.
But I'm guessing you're consciously thinking of him when you're out here. And I can tell you, I lost my father in 1994, my mother in 1982, and I think about them every single day. So that's never going to go away. And nor should it, by the way. But the fact that you're trying to connect in a shared space, as it were, I think is something you should really think about more and more. And I think you probably will the nearer you get to Katahdin.
Yeah, and I have a specific thing as I think about like the Shenandoahs. So we went on a family trip back in 2004. I was, I think, 9 at the time. Sure. Where we went to DC and then we went up into the mountains. And my dad and I did a kayaking trip. It was just a day paddle on the Shenandoah River. So when we think about aqua blazing as we get to the Shennies or things like that, that's like a through line for me from my childhood. So one thing I've even thought about, especially, we're kind of, if we slow down at this point, we maybe are going to be on the cusp of not making it to Katahdin in time. So as we think about like people talking about flip-flopping or jumping up and hiking backwards or what have you, or skipping sections to try to make sure you get to Maine in time, one thing I've thought about in particular is leaving the shennies undone, because there's a specific element in my life that there'd be a completeness to it in finishing on that section. Like if I were to come back and finish with the Aquablaze, that would be sort of closing that loop and that through line from my childhood with my father in a way that, you know, it gives it a meaning that for anybody else, it would just be like kind of a fun 2 days off trail.
That is exactly what Hike Your Own Hike is all about. And if you wanted to do that, you should absolutely do it. You know, your epic finish wouldn't actually be Cotard, yours would be completing the Aquablaze. I would totally do that if I was you. It'd be a wonderful way to, the whole of that Aquablaze, I'd imagine, because I'm thinking about my dad now, actually, from what you said, you know, and it still hurts I haven't got my dad. I'd love my dad to know what I was doing now, you know, and that's the thing that really kind of gets to me as well. So to actually fulfill that thought, you know, with your father in that last bit, that is your perfect finish. So I hope you do that and hope you get the opportunity to do that. Yeah,
and I have a little pendant that I put some of his ashes in that I've been carrying with me to deer, because we would go deer hunting and stuff together. Right. So, you know, there's that element too of like, I've had some times where it's not like dark, but just difficult times where, you know, you kind of had those internal dialogues where you're like, I'm going to quit. I hate this. This sucks. This effing trail, blah, 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 all that, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if I really believe that I'm like drawing strength from it, but there's a part of me that wants to believe that like he is with me and I'm carrying him with me and I can kind of draw from that. So that's one of the things I'm wrestling with too.
Keep that thought. I wish I had one piece of ash from my father as well, and I don't. And the fact you've got it, you could just like touch the pendant and that will draw that strength for you. Well, that wasn't the direction I thought we were going to talk about, but you know what? I'm really glad we did, and I hope that works out for you, and I really appreciate your company the last couple of days, but also for, you know, talking to us about this.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it.
Cheers. Day 61, which is Friday. VA 615, mile 585.2 to Jenny Knob Shelter, mile 604.0, an 18.8 mile day, my longest day so far. We woke to a wet morning. The atmosphere in the communal area in the hostel was kind of muted as people prepared breakfast. We hadn't had much rain in our forecast, and generally we've been really lucky, you know, with the weather. I told you, I think the first 50 days, I think I walked in rain just once. It was just amazing, to be honest with you. But the area needed rain, so and the forecast for rain was about another 5 days of it. And there had been plenty of rain forecast for the rest of the day, though we thought, looking at the radar, that we had a window of about, 2 hours before the rain started. The long drive back to VA 615 meant that we had a late start, somewhere around 9 a.m. on the trail. I remember this climb back in 2014, and I set off at a pretty good pace. I hardly stopped at all on the way up, so I was going real well. So much so that nobody passed me for about, 25 minutes, and that's when one of the younger ones did, obviously. And that first climb had then been negotiated. With quite a few hikers out on this day, I planned to stop for lunch at Helvy's Mill Shelter. I was then going to sort of see where I was with both the weather and the time, and then decide whether or not to push on to Jenny Knob Shelter for this 18 or 19 mile day. And I don't know what it was about this day, but I was faster, more secure in my legs, and entirely comfortable on the trail. And I soon got to Helvy's Mill Shelter, and it was easily early enough for me to go in there and have some lunch and get out again and get to the Jenny Knob Shelter with about another 10 miles to go, and on much easier terrain by the looks of things. So I actually did that first 9 miles in about 3 3/4 hours, which for me is pretty good. But the turnoff for the shelter suggested a 0.3 mile side trail. And as I was going well and the weather was looking not too bad, you know, we'd had rain, but not enough to put on any wet clothes. And so I was flying. So I didn't want to interrupt the momentum. And I think momentum is often important on the trail, and I had it. I felt good about it, and I wanted to carry on with it. So I was flying, but about mile 16, my problems started. A slight pain in the front of my shin, my right shin, And more than anything else, I was surprised. I've never had a pain here before, and when I looked down at my leg, it was swollen and slightly red. I didn't think too much about it and continued on to the shelter, and the pain was increasing the nearer I got to it. I was mainly hurrying because I didn't want to set up my tent. I was hoping for a place in the shelter. I possibly should have slowed down, but I didn't. And when I got there were several places available, and I immediately set up my AirPad and my sleeping equipment. And at the time, I wasn't too worried about the pain, though the redness did concern me a little bit, so I simply went about my normal camp chores without giving too much thought about it. The dreaded shin splints came to mind, but as I had no real experience of what they were, I kind of partly dismissed it. The shelter filled up pretty quickly and several others arrived later, needing to set their tents up, so I felt good about my day, which was my longest day so far. But I felt good about it because I'd made this plan to get to a place. I got there, I got what I needed to get to manage my hike the way I wanted to manage it. So I went to sleep that night in the hope and the full expectation that the pain in my leg would be gone by the morning. Day 62, which was yesterday, Saturday. Jenny Knob Shelter, mile 604 to Weary Feet, mile 610.1, just a 6.1 mile day. The following morning, the pain hadn't gone. It wasn't so intense, but it certainly hadn't gone. And it felt like what I imagined shin splints would be. This pain across my shin, which I still don't know enough about it, by the way, just so you know. And I just thought, well, I should be able to work my way through this. I should be able to, still keep hiking. It would just be a bit painful. Take some ibuprofen. It shouldn't be too bad. So I kind of set off. We had another rain day in our future, starting around 11 a.m. So I realised that, looking at the mileage, I realised I could get off trail by 11 a.m. at Weary Feet Hostel, another one of my favourite hostels on trail. Then I could have a longer day the following day, all the way to Woods Hole Hostel, and possibly even Slap Packet. The other reason I wanted to get to Weary Feet was to get my podcast done, ready for this Monday. So I contacted Bridget there and I asked for a room for both me and for Big John because he wanted to follow the same plan. While we're there, I managed to actually record Big John and he revealed he'd also been having injury issues. I'll play that after this. So now my day was set and I set out pretty quickly once more with the pain in my shin, fairly minor, especially on the uphills, and we had an uphill straight away. So I didn't feel that there were any issues I needed to worry about. As soon as I started going downhill again, I knew that I had a problem. The pain got worse and worse as I got closer to Weary Feet Hostel. And even though, I got there pretty quickly, I got there by 11 a.m., pretty much as the rain was about to really get started. The pain was pretty excruciating at this point. And I thought my trip was over. I really did. I thought I was done. I thought, this is something I'm not going to get over. But then, as if to prove the serendipity of the trail, a young lady, Mariposa, who I'd met a few evenings previously, had decided to take a 0 day at Weary Feet. I started talking with her, and she told me that she was a physician's assistant, a fact that I'd forgotten from our previous conversation. She checked out my my leg and my smelly old feet and told me that she didn't think I had shin splints because they apparently appear on a slightly different side of the leg, and she asked immediately if I'd ever had a blood clot. Now, some of you may remember that I did have a blood clot on that right leg several years previously and that it had developed into a pulmonary embolism. She told me that my plan to go to an urgent care was not a good idea, that I should go to an emergency room immediately. Well, that doesn't sound good, does it? So Eric, Bridget's husband, returned from shuttling somewhere and immediately drove me to Pearisburg to the emergency room. And to be honest with you, I was pretty much down in the dumps. I mean, that's probably under-expressing it. I've got to the state of my hike before these last few days where I know that I can do this. I know that I've got the strength to do this. I know that everything's cooperating my body to do this. And suddenly I've got this pain that's threatening to stop me doing something I think I can do. And I feel I felt, and I still feel, pretty ticked off about it. Not anybody's fault, obviously, but, mine possibly. But Eric dropped me off at the emergency room, and I was seen pretty much straight away. A lovely lady did an ultrasound to check if I had a clot, and that happened pretty quickly. Soon after I'd actually seen the doctor, he came in, he said to me, we need to make sure there's not a clot, and then if there isn't a clot, we need to check if there's a stress fracture. If there isn't that, then we're going to kind of conservatively treat your leg as an overuse injury, and you'll need to rest for 2, 3 or 4 days, something like that. But he said, I'm confident you can get back on trail. Well, I wasn't feeling that confident right now, but, and so the ultrasound came back negative. Then he sent in the x-ray technician, who then took x-rays right there on the bed, and that too proved to be negative. And it took quite a while. I was in there for about 3 hours, something like that. But they were constantly popping in and out and talking to me and telling me how things are going. And at the end of these tests and examinations, the doctor told me that he wasn't sure, but he knew there wasn't a clot. There wasn't a stress fracture, and he didn't think there was shin splint. So he asked if I'd be able to take 2 or 3 days off trail to rest my leg and keep it elevated and perhaps iced while using ibuprofen and Tylenol. Now, this is where the serendipity of the trail stepped up a notch. At trail days, a week before, a listener had bumped into me. His name was Duncan Dan, along with his lovely wife, Kelly, and the two of them really enjoy the show. I spent several minutes chatting with them about hiking, and they seemed to take to me. We had a good visit. Later that afternoon, I received an email from Dan, who asked if I'd be up for being entertained by them, slack packed by them, having a meal with them, and even staying overnight in their mini RV. I told him I'd love to, and we decided to go and do a slack pack from Woods Hole Hostel on Monday morning. Well, I reached out to Dan while I was there in the emergency room, and I asked if he could put me up there in his RV for a few days while I rested up my leg. He immediately said he was up for it, and that he'd come to pick me up from Weary Feet the following morning. So how about that for things working out? So I'm at Weary Feet now. I'm sitting with Big John, who I've been hiking with for a couple of days. Thanks for talking to us. Where are you from?
I live about 30 miles northeast of Amarillo, a small town called Fritch, Texas.
All right. And what are you doing out here? Because I know you've been out here before, haven't you?
I came out in 2024 when I retired to attempt to hike the trail. Made it a little north of Damascus. Hit the Creeper Trail, decided my knees were too swollen.
Right.
And went back down and made a plan then to come back in 2 years and try it again. So got healthier. I'm over 600 miles in this year. My knees are not swollen.
Unfortunately, you've got another problem though, haven't you?
Yeah, I got ankle hurting a little bit, but that's pretty normal for the trail. You're going to have aches and pains, and you're going to have struggles.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing this knowing that I'm not going to be hiking forward with you, because we've been hiking together on and off for the last few days. What's your overall impression of the trail this year? Have you enjoyed it?
I've enjoyed it. I can see all the damage from Hurricane Helene,
Isn't that amazing?
And the lack of people to keep the trail up. So the overgrowth is a little worse now than in 2024, but they're busy still cutting out problem areas from the hurricane.
Yeah, and we've had the most remarkable run of decent weather, haven't we? And now we've been going through a bit of rain. Is that affecting your injury at all? Because I'm much more wary on some of the downs at the moment.
Well, I'm just wary of it anyhow. For the most part, the injury, just trying to manage it day to day.
Sure.
And not overdo it, which kind of pushed it a little hard the day before yesterday. And but it seems to be tolerable right now, and that's all I'm looking for, is that it's not getting worse.
Yeah. Have you got any swelling there, or because I've got swelling and redness, which is why I'm off trail for a few days. What's yours look like? Is it looking like just no swelling at all?
No, I have some minor swelling, but no redness, so it's not getting over irritated.
So what made you want to do this in the first place? I know you retired. Was this always an ambition?
No, I live in the Texas Panhandle, so I'm a flatlander by trade. And I watched the movie A Walk in the Woods, and I thought, what a great way to get into shape after you retire.
Yeah.
And then I'd driven trucks through this part of the world and thought, I just imagined what it was like to land in a ship on shore and then just go, hey, I wonder what's over there.
Yeah.
So how you came through all the woods and crossed the rivers and all the things that you would have had to done back then to get across the country.
So what does your family think about you doing this?
My brother thinks I'm stupid. He don't even walk to the end of. He don't want to walk to the end of his driveway.
If he listens to this, he's going to appreciate that. By the way.
Well, that's okay.
But he must have a grudging respect now that you've done 600 miles.
Well, I think a lot of people have. Even one of my friends in Damascus, she wasn't real big on the hikers, but she did 9 miles from Dennis Cove to Shook Branch with me.
All right.
And after that 9 miles, she had a lot more respect for what we're doing out here, carrying the heavier packs and walking twice that distance some days.
Yeah, and it's funny, when people come and join you, a lot of people said they want to join me with a hike. I thought, well, that's not going to work that well, really, because especially if I've got miles on my legs, I think we're surprised how well were doing, and yet we still go forward and with the same enthusiasm I started. I've got that enthusiasm still. I've got the miles on my legs now, and I know when I get restarted in about 4 or 5 days, I'm sure I'll be getting up to those miles again. And people come and join you, they just can't do it, can they? They can't do 15, 18 miles straight away.
No, I mean, unless they're seasoned hikers.
Sure.
I mean, even me coming back out on the trail again this year, I tried to stick to the 8 to 10 through Georgia.
Yeah.
I did okay. Some days I still went a little further, but
yeah.
But I was really trying to prevent injury by doing those short hikes and then gradually build up to the longer hikes.
And I know that because you quoted it back at me, that I talked about doing 86 miles a week until the end to get to there in time before the mountain closes. Are you going to adopt that similar sort of approach now?
Yeah, because I think it's a better approach than approaching it miles per day or miles per month.
Yeah, miles per month is too long a period, isn't it, really?
Right. And this is more manageable, and you can see as you go through the week. And it also gives you opportunity if you get there. Now, here's a great time to take a zero. I'm on schedule.
That's right. You're taking a zero in Pearisburg, aren't you?
Yes.
Get a bit of a rest. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been hiking since last Monday, so that'll be a full week.
Yeah.
And I think a day off will be worth it. Plus we're celebrating Memorial Day this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely worth it. Well, look, I'm sorry I won't be hiking with you again for some time, but you never know. I might be back and might catch you up, and you take a couple of days, and we'll be back on trail together. But I appreciate you hiking with me the last few days and spending time around you as well. And thanks for talking to us on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
Yep.
Yes, I may have received some wonderful luck over this issue over the past couple of days, but I can't deny that I am remaining fairly negative. I'm going to take advantage of the wonderful generosity of Dan and Kelly. They've even suggested that they will help in my recovery once I start hiking again by slack packing me. However, I know that I tend to heal a little slower these days, so I want to remain realistic as well as trying to become more positive about my chances of getting back to Weary Feet Hostel and continuing the trail. Dana has told me to take as long as it takes to make sure that I can get back and give myself a chance. Yet, I think I know myself well enough that on Thursday morning when I set out, I'll know whether or not I can do this pretty quickly, and I'm not going to delude myself. Consequently, there's going to be no hiking for me to talk about in the next show, so I think I'm going to review certain aspects of the hike on each of the days, though I would otherwise be hiking. So watch out for that on Thursday. I know that many of you are cheering me on because many of you reached out to me regularly and some of you already know what's going on. However, I think you know enough through my podcast that I won't be stupid and put my future health at risk by trying to do something that I just can't do. Just a few days ago, I was certain I could do this. And I suppose that this is just part of the everyday management of hikes that come upon you and you have to deal with what's in front of you at the time. And I'm trying to approach it in that way. Wish me luck. I'll see you next time.